Hello everyone. I saw this technique a long time ago, maybe 5 years ago, and somehow I forgot about it. I came across a clip by the artist who invented this technique, Elena Kalinicheva. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. If Elena happens to see this, I won't be embarrassed, so don't throw your slippers at me. I wanted to make a similar piece using resin and dew to create the effect of a dark night, like it's raining in the jungle and you're looking out a car or house window and water is dripping down the glass. That's the mood I want to convey with this piece. So I'm using a thin canvas on cardboard and applying a thick layer of acrylic paint without water using a wide, thick brush. This is where we need a good surface, a flat surface, so I do it with a wide brush. You can even protonate it with an aerosol can so that it's straight and evenly. If you have large seams or bumps and lumps, then after the acrylic dries, take sandpaper P380 or P320, sand it well, degrease it, and proceed to the next stage. Let's get started together. I'm showing my process, but in no way teaching anyone how to do it, especially those whose technique isn't mine at all. I'm showing how I wanted to do it. So I applied the acrylic and waited for it to dry. I actually took a building hairdryer and used it all the time. If you think it's very clean and aesthetically beautiful, I'm afraid to upset you. No, put on gloves, protect the table, protect your hands. Because even when I was making the base, I got all dirty and then cleaned my ring for a long time. I'm glad my husband doesn't see or know about it. The base has dried. Now I take a palette, any plate. I cover my palette with polyethylene film, sometimes if I have time with cling film or tape. Then I apply thick artistic acrylic paint to it. Here, the paint needs to be diluted. There are multiple ways to dilute it. I guess you could apply diluted acrylic to the leaves with a brush, or you could dip the leaf in it. I've tried various methods. It leaves a better imprint if you apply the paint with a brush on the leaves. I gathered the leaves and kept them in between sheets of paper, the pages of the plants, so they would be as flat as possible. The first time I printed with acrylic, I messed it up, of course. All the gloves got dirty. Keep some napkins nearby. I also keep dry napkins nearby to absorb any excess. Wherever the paint didn't print, I paint it again with a thin paintbrush. I have thick acrylic. Use undiluted acrylic, dab it slightly and now blot it on the canvas, but don't blot it with your hands. Instead, use a dry napkin. If it's dirty somewhere, you can clean it with a wet napkin. Press the dry napkin down. Be careful that this napkin doesn't go to the next stage of the leaf and get dirty. This is how we blot. Think about how many layers you want to make your leaves. I made 3 layers. I did this further down. Layers are made of such narrow leaves, then I will add smaller leaves, so I varied them. In general, I wanted to find a palm leaf, but it took too long to get it, and one wilted, and I didn't get it. So here's my advice. If you're going to use this technique, then pick the leaves and start right away because they naturally wilt, naturally lose their shape, look different, and it's better to choose denser petal structures, not so. I took thin ones and they were very shaky, some even tore, but it's better to go with a thick one directly. I dry each layer. Look, here is the moment. Now I'm collecting colors on the palette, getting dark green, black, olive, and yellow. The first layer should be dark because I want the work to look deep. Firstly, I dilute the color with water so it's not dense, so you don't paint over everything. It's supposed to be like akin to a watercolor, a stained glass. I paint over it with different shades, as you can see, in some places darker, somewhere more salad green, somewhere more gray. And additionally, when I paint the entire color background and with a taste for drawing and even more good skills, this option is only for those who can't draw and don't want to learn, those deeply convinced that they can't draw. The main thing here is to be patient, to gather materials step by step, to perform all the drawing techniques. Also, I let it dry layer by layer. Don't try to make the same color. Like I said, try to diversify. Shades, warmer, lighter. Here I've got more rounded petals, by the way. They're also flimsy. I made two and they tore. The first petal I made returned. I used a dry napkin to blot it, pressed down on the stems so that it made a good imprint. And you know, it's better to stop while you're ahead. I made the petals and then I decided to make another fern. I mean, I wanted it to be a fern or a palm tree from the very beginning. I ruined it. I had to paint over it with black. Sometimes you just have to stand up, get up on a stool, and take a look at your work from a bird's eye view and decide that that's it, that's enough, you've drawn enough. Here's the last third layer that I'm doing, and I'm drawing with a lighter green paint. That is, I added yellow to the olive-colored paint, and you can see it's already glowing. By the way, that's not the last layer. There will be another lighter layer and a lower one. Look, they're cool, they're more of a gray-green, and these are already warm. And here, by the way, the history begins. We need to make our leaves different from the previous layer. I'm using a brush, not all the leaves. I use a brush to outline the leaves that are on top, also with stained black acrylic paint, meaning not dense here. Listen, not very dense. If you paint right here with an opaque black, firstly, the layer will be different. Because the diluted color is acrylic, it lays down thinly like a watercolor. And if you paint with pure, dense acrylic, then it will have a relief like this. We don't need a step, especially since I will cover it all with epoxy resin. I'll dry it and add another layer. Generally, I understood that if you do this work on a large volume, it will look very cool. And if I've already got the whole idea, I'm already looking for some huge petals, you know, like puffs. I want to assemble a large panel for my studio to make a Sterlicia plant and to print it from Sterlicium. In general, I'm now in love with Sterlicia. I bought it for my studio. I want to dry it in resin. We got a little distracted. Here's my last petal I made. It ripped. We're drying. When drying with a construction hair dryer, also adjust the temperature so it's not too hot because the acrylic will bubble and the canvas will also bubble. So check the temperature with your hand to ensure it's not too hot. I'm mixing olive, dark green, and even lighter green and a little bit of white. Sometimes I imagined I have a slight highlight from left to right and I make some petals lighter, some petals with a dark center. Play around. Don't make it monochromatic. Don't make it boring. Make it more fun. Make it more diverse. Add brighter, juicier colors. Even with a black background, your work will remain expressive. You'll be amazed when you see how it looks under resin. I'm not sure if I'm in love, though interestingly, the works that I adore the most tend not to be as appealing to a large audience. I've noticed this. The works that I don't particularly like somehow end up being more appreciated. I don't know, let's see how you review this work. I'm still drawing the center just like how I started, but the center is now turning brighter green with petals. Remember, if you see a white smudge or an underdrawn stem or excess paint, take black paint and cover it. Or use the base color that you have. Yes, I have a black base. That's why I sketch in black. You could have any base color you want. I dry it the same way I normally do. See, you need to be patient and pass this stage. Necessary to dry. Now, when it's all dried, I coat the work with acrylic varnish. This has to be done before covering with epoxy resin. And ideally, you should have already mixed the epoxy resin for us to proceed. It shouldn't exceed 50 degrees and the temperature ought to be 24, 27 degrees. Resin doesn't favor the cold, it simply cannot bear it. Put it on an even surface. Thank goodness, phones already have apps for that. Use your phone to verify how level your surface is. And don't put the canvas, if you have it on paper or cardboard too, don't just put it on a single point in the center because it will bend under the resin during polymerization like a zone. Place it on multiple supports, on 5 or 6 supports. 4 isn't enough. More the supports, the better. Good thing then we shield ourselves, protect our respiratory tract, our hands, respiratory tract and eyes. Because I've been working with resin for 11 years and I never had any issues. I know people who just walked in and inhaled everything and they ended up with terrible asthma allergies. Some get irritated and some get it in their eyes. So take care of yourself. Don't test your strength. For your body to consume it, especially during polymerization, when you're cleaning, be sure to wash the floors and wipe the lamps from above. And now, as my student says, it's time to kill some nerves. We'll sand the surface. I want mine to be matte, so I'm taking sandpaper that's 280 grit. I think it's better to use a finer grit so there aren't any scratches. I'll sand thoroughly. If there are any bumps, that's okay. They'll be removed during this stage. I'll coat it with matte varnish. There's also glossy varnish, of course. I really like PBO matte varnish. It gives a super varnish effect, like velvet. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it here. I bought this ordinary aerosol can from a hardware store. Spray from about 40 to 45 centimeters away. Use quick, sharp movements. Don't linger even wear a respirator so you don't breathe it in. Now, the nervous twitch and eye twitching continues. More fun. I take UV resin from the Rain Pro company, or Art Resin in Russia under this name. The brand sells resin and all the necessary materials for it. If anything, the promo code NATERIUM for a 10% discount, use it. And with Dodds', these are 2 balls on a metal stick specially made for nail design. Come on. I always tell my students, there are super many useful things there. Prepare the dots, prepare the toothpick, prepare the hairpin. Be patient. Well, if you want to make do, it will turn out, believe me, very cool. Well, in general, by the way, write who watched the video, write how you liked this effect, liked it or not. I dry with a flashlight in between, but it was hot outside, the sun was shining, that's why. And I didn't do everything myself. I did this ombre, that is, in the beginning it's just little by little, droplets go down the nets, and where the water stops flowing, there are no more droplets anymore. I made small ones in the beginning of the pono, right at the top, where the dew begins to flow. There's a kind of straight there I've done thickly. Read the instructions carefully. How long does your UV resin dry? I dry the lantern for 2 minutes. I also have a lamp. I dried it with it. Just be careful. If it is very hot outside, like I have, it will freeze even in the lid or in some kind of thing in which you will work. So it is better that the sun doesn't get in when you work and then dry. So glue our logo necessarily. Well, you yours, I mine. Yes, so that everyone knows whose work and right, please. What are your thoughts about the work? Did I steal the equipment? Someone can also write it, and I framed it. Now this beauty looks like this. I have even more useful things on the Patreon learning platform. There are lessons in English and Russian. Follow the link at the bottom of the description. Just put everything here. Have a great day.